Hello everybody and welcome to OBS Obsessed. I'm John Lacey and this is the show where we talk about all things OBS Studio. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about a couple of plugins from Aitum, which you can find at aitum.tv, the Vertical plugin and the Multistream plugin. And some of the really cool things that these plugins will let you do, but we are going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching in the chat, let me know where you're watching from. I'm just going to make sure I move over to the live chat. And then I can see Saeed saying hello, hello, hello. And again, I've got to press two buttons for this on this particular show. Thank you so much for joining me today, Saeed. Great to have your company as always. Okay, so let's just get stuck in because this is really cool and I love talking about this. And I kind of want you to keep an open mind because there will be different use cases for this software. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's totally fine. And I'm not selling it. It's literally free. I've got nothing to gain from you using this or not using this. I just think it's really awesome. So I wanted to talk to you about it. So if you are interested in this, and I'm pretty sure I included the links in the video description, but you can head over to aitum.tv and we can check out the products. They've got all products. They've got the Aitum app, which is sort of their main thing. And I must admit, I've never played with that ever. So I might not need to check that out one day, but we've got the Vertical and we've got the Multistream. And the Vertical, essentially, it'll give you a second canvas in OBS Studio that by default is vertical, but in reality can be changed to a square or horizontal as well. It'll give you a second way of working with all of this stuff. And I think we're probably going to build out a bit of a scene collection with that today. But essentially, you can create clips for short platforms like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Reels, etc. You can record alternate content, so that could just be purely vertical. It could be completely differently branded. You can also stream to different places, and they're kind of recommending that you can funnel additional viewership to your main platform. That's sort of an interesting idea to explore. They've got a bit of a rewind replay feature, which I've never really used, but if you are a game player especially, that might be worth knowing about. And also multi-streaming. So multi-streaming is actually built into this Vertical plugin, but there is another plugin that I'll talk about in a second. And you can set up different hotkeys for that. We can link it up all together. It's really cool. So let's just head over to our second version of OBS. I'm starting with a new scene collection up here. And I don't really have a lot going on here. So I've got the Vertical. So we might move over this side. And I've got the traditional horizontal view as well. So the thing you'll notice when you install this plugin is you'll get a few extra docs. And if you don't see these, you can go to the docs menu and check them out. There'll be vertical scenes, vertical sources, vertical scene transitions, and vertical, which is the canvas itself. And from here, we can sort of build these things out together. And it's a good idea if we go in and I'm going to do this in real time because I think it's really worthwhile looking at this, but let's rename this and we'll say, we'll call this opening. And again, because you'll be working with two lots of scene collections, it's often a good idea to think about some sort of naming convention. Here I'm going to go opening and vertical opening. And I'm going to create a new scene. This again is for the main canvas, the traditional one, the horizontal one. And I will call this John. And I'll do a similar thing down here. I'll say vertical John. And I'll do another one in the main called screen share. And again, I'm going to do the same sort of thing down here with vertical screen share. You don't need to be this prescriptive. I just find it's really a useful way of actually organizing this stuff. So now we've got our scenes and our vertical scenes, and we've got our sources and our vertical sources. And if you're not seeing any of these, you can find them from the docs menu. You can drag and drop these all around. We've also got the scene transitions and the vertical scene transitions, and I'll talk to you more about that in a second. But what we can do, let's go to our opening, and usually I will have some sort of video or maybe even some artwork here. At the beginning of my stream, I'm going to go and just add an image, and I will call this opening image. I don't really have too much planned for this already, so I'm going to move this over here and I'm going to just find an image that we can include somewhere on my computer. In fact, let's do that classic thing I like to do, and we'll use the artwork for this particular episode of the show. So I've got my artwork here. That's great. And I probably want to do something similar down here. So I can go to my vertical opening, and in my vertical sources, I can go plus and I can add an image. I say that, it's not, it's right at the top. There we go. So when I click on the add an image, I've got two options here. I can actually add a new image, or I can actually grab something from the images from the main canvas. So in this case, I might just reuse this one again. Obviously, the thing that you'll notice straight away is that this is a horizontal image, and it's not going to fit particularly well in this this canvas. So we've got a couple of options. We could just resize this. We could right click and actually go, you know, fit to screen, and that would sort of make it small and in the middle, which I think is perfectly fine. I guess we can Control Z to undo that, but that actually undoes everything, which is not great. Can I do that? I probably can't do that again, can I? All right, that was weird. I was not expecting that to happen. So let me just go back in. And let's just see if we can reset this one. So I'm going to right set, and I'm just going to go reset transform. This is where it gets a little dicey because I actually can't see where that source is on my canvas anymore, which is incredibly annoying. But what we can do, and again, I have to go to my preview scaling. I'm going to switch from scale to window to canvas. And then if I hold down the space bar, I should be able to zoom out. All right. So I'm not really sure. Look, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go into my transform options. I'm going to go edit transform. Actually, what I probably should do is just make sure it's still, it doesn't, okay, the image isn't in there. So that's half the battle. So let me just go and find that image again really quickly. Here we go. We've got that one there. All right. So again, let's go back to our vertical sources. I'm going to add my image. This time I'm going to use the same opening image. I'm not going to actually resize this though. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to go to transform and let's rotate it. And that way it'll be on a bit of an angle, but it will fill the canvas. And that might be worthwhile. And I guess this is the choice that you get to make each step of this process is, are you going to reuse something from the horizontal version of the stream, or are you going to redesign something? Because I could certainly, I mean, I created this thumbnail, like I've got the images. I could repurpose this into a vertical format that made more sense. I think that would probably be pretty good. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reset this. I'm going to resize this and let's just throw it in the middle somewhere. And I'm going to go to transform center to screen. The other thing about this too is, got that preview there. So essentially, and I know this is not terribly exciting. I've spent sort of 5 minutes explaining how you can add the same image to both versions of this thing, but trust me, we're going to get more interesting in a second. Okay, so once we've got that, we can go to maybe our John and our vertical John scenes. And normally this is the point at which I would add my camera in. And my camera is currently in use, so I'm going to cheat a little bit with the virtual camera. But let's go and add a new video capture device. And I'll say John camera. You can call these whatever you like, as long as it makes sense to you later on what they are. That's the important thing. Normally I would use my camera link, but in this case I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use the OBS virtual camera. And I'm going to click OK. And that's exactly the same thing that you're already seeing in the corner of the screen. So we've got that there. And let's do the same sort of thing down here in the vertical options. Let's go add a video capture device. And I'm going to reuse the John camera. Again, you can see the John camera is, you know, it's not particularly well positioned here because it's a horizontal camera. And I can grab the sides. I can make this a little bit bigger. I can reposition this, whatever I think is appropriate here. And incidentally, one of the things that I often like to do, and I'm actually gonna just bring out this vertical canvas for a second. And I'm just going to make this a bit bigger because I can't really see everything I'm working from in that little section. So I could just make this really, really big if I really wanted to fill the frame. I'm probably losing a little bit of quality there, but I think it's acceptable. I think it's okay. So we can do that. And again, I will go and dock this back on the left-hand side. And we've got the camera there. So we've got the opening, we've got the John, and we've got the screen share. I don't really have a screen share. I literally don't have a screen. I've got 4 different screens in front of me, but they're all sort of in use with different parts of this stream. So we're going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to find an image, which I think will be a screen share image. And again, I'm not even sure what I've got in my library, but let me go find something really quickly. In fact, let's go to the old LinkedIn Live profile folder. I don't know that I've even got anything here. Okay, it looks like there is a Stream Deck image. I don't know what this looks like, but that's fine. Let's put that in there. And we've got our screen share, but I'm thinking it might actually be good to bring in my camera as well. And normally for the mainstream, because I'm using this green screen, I would just bring in the camera by itself. But in this case, I think I'm going to actually use the source. And hello to Erica. Thanks so much for joining us today. Great to have your company. We're just having a bit of a play with OBS Studio today, and with the Aitum Vertical plugin, which sort of gives you the ability to do vertical and horizontal versions of streams or video recordings. So right now I've got my image, which is a stand-in for a screen share, because like I said, I literally have, I have all my screens in use for this particular, and I've got 4 of them, but I've got them all in use at the moment. So we're just going to pretend a little bit. But what I'm going to do, because I could actually bring in my camera again. And this is really important because this is a bit of a rookie mistake I see a lot of people doing, is that if they want to use their camera again in another scene, they'll often be tempted to create a new version. And you don't want to do that because once the camera is in use somewhere else, you can't usually use it again. So what we do instead is we go add existing, and I could go John camera, and potentially I could use the Alt key to drag in the sections here, and I could crop this. And I could resize this. If I grab the corner and drag in, and I could put that somewhere else. I'm going to actually cheat a little bit here, because I think what I want to do is I'm going to delete the John camera. I'm actually going to go and do, if I've got it installed in this version, I think I do, source clone. Okay, so I'm going to go source clone, and I'll go round John camera. And I'm actually going to grab my camera source here. And again, with another plugin that I've spoken about in a previous show, if I right click on this and go to my filters option and go to the effect filters and add in the advanced mask, I'm going to do this as an alpha mask. I'm going to make this a circle. And I'm probably not particularly centered in this frame, so I will need to tweak this a little bit. And I think it's, no, that actually was pretty good. Going to resize the centering options. There we go. So I think that works. And there are feathering options here as well. So we can do like inner feathering, and that'll give that a really sort of soft, blurry edge. But I kind of like the hard edge, so I'll leave that alone. So I've got my camera there. Again, it's probably a little bit big for my purposes. I really want to focus. Let me just make sure I've got the right thing selected. I really want to maybe just have me in a corner somewhere while I'm explaining this, and we're good to go from there. So again, let's try and do a similar thing down the bottom for our vertical sources. In this case, I don't know that I really want to use the source clone version. I mean, I could potentially, if that's available, which I think it is. So, I mean, I could bring this in here. In fact, like you know, and these are all the creative options that you have. You've got to play with these things and see what works. So in this case, I probably wouldn't do that though. I'll probably get rid of that. I will probably just go with my normal camera. But before we do that, let's just add in that screen share image. And again, I probably want to make that a little bit smaller. Keep in mind that you can always go to the transform, edit transform options if you want to do this manually. So I'll go 1920 by 1080 is what it was previously. So that's not going to help me. I'm not going to try and do math here in real time because that's always a recipe for disaster, but I'm just going to resize that until it looks okay. I probably would literally just have it at the top of my screen. And again, I don't think that's particularly pixel perfect, but let's just roll with it for the moment. Let's go in and add our video capture device. It's surprisingly hard to see things in this list because I think in the vertical sources, they're organized alphabetically in the way that they're not for the other. Actually, no, they're really not. I don't know, the order feels different. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I haven't had enough coffee. That's always an option. So in this case, what I kind of want to do is I'll have myself at the bottom of the screen. And again, I might need to resize myself to fill that space. And I might just want to make sure that the screen share image is always on top because I think that would be better. So I'm not obscuring any of that. And often, especially if I'm making a clip for vertical repurposing for YouTube Shorts, for TikTok, for Reels, etc., I usually want to leave some space in there for some burnt-on captions. So just keep that in mind. But I can nudge that in position with the cursor keys as well, or Shift, and the cursor keys goes even further, which is really, really nifty. So I've got those two options. I've got my three scenes, and I think that's all I had planned for the moment. So what we can do now, though, is we can actually link these things together. So if I right-click on the vertical opening scene, and there's a little menu, it says link scenes, I can say, okay, I want to link this to the opening. And if I go down to vertical John, I will link that one to John. And this is where it's really useful to have those naming conventions because you don't have to think too much. And I can do that for the screen share as well. So link scenes, screen share. And now, assuming this works, if I go to one of those scenes in the horizontal version, you'll see that it automatically follows in the vertical. And that way, if you're moving between scenes, if you're using keyboard shortcuts, or if you're using an Elgato Stream Deck button, you only need to think about doing that in the horizontal version. And it's a little outside of the scope of today's show, but I will show you really, really briefly. So if we go to File menu and to our settings, and go to the hotkeys section, and if I search for John, we will have our different scenes and sources here. Hopefully, maybe I'm doing that wrong. Let's look for scene. Okay, so if I search for the word scene, you'll see switch to scene John, switch to scene openings, switch to scene screen share. You do actually also have the ability to do this for the vertical versions, but again, if you've linked those, you probably don't need to. And, you know, so what we can do here, we could go in and we could add some sort of keyboard shortcut to switch between these. You know, whatever it happens to be. And I'm going to get rid of those because I'm not actually going to use those. But if you wanted to do that, you could. Again, if you've got an Elgato Stream Deck, there's a scene. In fact, let me show you. Let me bring up that software. I can't show you in this second version of OBS because that's not how this works. But essentially, if I go to the scenes, scene, all I need to do is find this, give it a title, and then just nominate the scenes. And again, just keep in mind that the scene list that you might be seeing on the screen is actually the version I'm running the show in, not the second version I'm demonstrating in. But once you've done that, it's literally just a matter of pressing those buttons and going to those different scenes. And I know some of you are probably wondering why you might want to do this. And again, it will depend very much on your use case. But essentially, the great thing about this is we can potentially do an entire presentation once and have it recorded in both horizontal and vertical. We have the ability to actually stream it horizontal and vertical. And in some cases, such as YouTube, you could potentially do that, both of those in real time. or as near to real time as possible at the same time. Again, I know that might be splitting up your audience a little bit, and I haven't done a lot with vertical streaming on YouTube, but it's probably something I need to play with at some point. But the great thing about this, and I guess we haven't spoken about these yet, so let's look at these. At the bottom of the vertical dock, which is the one with the canvas, you've got a few different options here, and we've got the ability to stream, and this is stream all vertical outputs. We've got the ability to record vertical. We've got the backtrack options. So again, if you want to replay the thing that happened 30 seconds ago or 15 seconds ago, you can do that. You can also make an individual clip of what happened for that duration. So if you just did something, and it's a little bit outside of the scope of what we're talking about today, but sometimes you can even set up things with chatbots that will, let people in your audience create a clip, especially on Twitch. We also have the vertical virtual camera. So again, in the same way that I use the horizontal virtual camera to bring OBS into other applications that support a webcam, we can do this with the vertical one too. This is predominantly, the reason this exists, and I didn't really understand it at first, but I reached out to Aitum and I asked the question, is essentially because it was a way of getting OBS into the TikTok studio if you wanted to go live in that fashion. So that's the main reason it works. It is, it is by definition a vertical canvas, a vertical camera. So sometimes if you bring that into apps that aren't expecting to see a vertical camera, it'll do weird distorting things with your camera, which is not good. We've got our settings. We've got the ability to actually support Aitum, because again, keep in mind that the plugins I'm talking about today are totally free. So if you want to give back to them, you can. And you can also head over to the website at aitum.tv. So let's check out the vertical settings options here. We've got the ability to change the canvas size and resolution. And like I said, by default, that is vertical, but you could make that a second horizontal canvas. You could make that square if you wanted to do that as well. We've got some vertical camera options. So we can do vertical, main, or both. I haven't tried both. I think that's something I'll have to try after the show. We've got the ability to do those backtrack clips. Again, not something I personally need, but especially if you're playing games, that's a really awesome thing. You can specify the period in seconds where they're being saved to, and set up some hotkeys for that functionality as well. We've got the streaming options. So this is where we would go out with our vertical canvas. So again, the first thing I will note is you'll see a warning up here that says, as you are using Aitum Multistream, you must control the vertical streaming outputs from the Aitum Multistream setup. So you can't actually do this here, but if you didn't have that second plugged in there, you could certainly do that here. And essentially, you could sort of adjust where you're actually streaming those to. And then we've got our recording options. So in the recording options, we can choose where we want to save this to. There are a lot of different settings. I'm not going to worry too much about those. We've got the start recording hotkey, the stop recording hotkey, pause recording, unpause, add chapter marker, but only if you're using that hybrid MP4 format. You can split the recording file. There are additional settings, so you can change sort of the streaming coder and the audio options and the file name output. And hello to Ernesto. Thank you so much for being here. So we actually have all those options in there. We've got the help ability as well. So I think, I'm just trying to remember. Okay, so this is the setting I really wanted to call out. So this is pretty magical. This one says start and stop recording when main OBS starts and stops recording. This is really, really cool. So if you've set up your vertical versions and that's going, and I guess the other thing I should do, I haven't really added any audio into any of this. So, and again, for my demonstration purposes, it doesn't really matter too much, but let me just talk to you about that briefly. So if we go add audio input capture, I'll just call this Rodecaster. And I'll get my Rodecaster Pro stereo. And if I go to my audio mixer, you can see I've got the audio there. Again, make sure you put the audio into your vertical sources as well. So because it's already here, we can find the audio input capture. We can go Rodecaster there. And we just want to make sure that both of those are in the relevant scenes. So again, I'm just going to re-add this to my input capture device. But again, because we've already got this one, I'm going to add existing and go to Rodecaster. But I want to do that for vertical and horizontal. And I don't know what this order is, but it's definitely different. And it's definitely tripping me up every time I go back to the vertical. And I guess the other thing too is I don't feel particularly centered in this frame. So I'm just going to, which doesn't matter for our purposes at all, but it's just annoying me. I might be a little bit OCD and not realize it. So the great thing about that, and again, just keep in mind that is in the settings and you go to recording and there's this little checkbox here that says start and stop recording when main OBS starts and stop recording. So now if I were to go start recording, you'll see that this actually lights up and it is recording. And then if I go to my John scene and I say whatever it is that I'm saying that's so fascinating, and then maybe I move over to my screen share, and keep in mind, this isn't a real screen share, this is just an image because all my monitors are in use for the stream, but I can do that and I can go, thank you very much. I can go back to my John's scene. Maybe I even end with the thumbnail artwork, and I can stop recording that. And now I will have two recordings. I will have the vertical and the horizontal as separate files. And if you're really, really nerdy, and I know this is not for everybody, but if you're really, really nerdy, you can actually bring both of those recordings into the same video editing software at the same time. You can add your captions, you can do your cuts, and then you literally just change the output size of the canvas and export one version, and then do that again and export a second version. So there's a lot of different things that we can do here that are really, really cool. So even if you're not going live, even if you don't want to go live with OBS Studio, you can literally just set this up to record videos and just speak to the camera, and you'll have a horizontal version and a vertical version as well. And that can happen in practically real time. If you don't make any errors, if you don't need to do too many cuts, that can really speed it up really, really quickly. Okay, so we've got that there. One thing we haven't really done here, and I'm kind of curious to see how this will play out, but by default, the fade transition is doing its thing. And, you know, if you watch the previous OBS Obsessed show, you'll know all about scene transitions. But, you know, if I change this one, maybe I actually want to change this to the move. And I'm going to go, okay. I'm not even going to worry about the settings. You can tweak these if you're worried about them. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to go opening, John, screen share. So you'll see that's happening in the horizontal version. We do also have this vertical scenes transition doc. And again, if you're not seeing that one, you can go to the docs and go to vertical scenes transitions to bring that up. Now we can actually, and this works pretty much the same, but the thing that I'm kind of curious about is that we have this option called copy from main. And I don't know how long this has been here. I only noticed this during the week. But essentially I could potentially use the same scene transition for both of these. And especially the move transition, which does a lot of calculations. I'm not really sure if this is going to work particularly well or if it's going to be a bit of a car crash, but let's find out in real time. So if I go to opening, I go to John, I go to screen share. It does seem like there's a little bit of a lag there between those two things. So maybe move isn't necessarily the best way to go. But again, I could grab any of my my other transitions. Let's try the Doom one just because that's fun. So now I've made the Doom transitions only for the vertical version. So we go opening. It's really fast. In fact, it's so fast, I doubt most people would even notice that. But the idea here is that we can use the same sort of transitions or we can use different ones. And that can be really useful. I imagine I could probably, in fact, I'm really curious because if I go to my transition table, okay, I do have the vertical options in here as well. So we can do that as well. And I'm not going to dwell on that too much because like I said, the last episode of OBS Obsessed is entirely about that. And I just want you to know that you can do that for vertical and horizontal as well. Just check in with the chat for a second. Hello to Cheryl from Cheryl's Design and Photo Art. Great to have your company today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I don't actually have the exciting animation on this particular one, but if you want to do that, you certainly can. But today on the show, we're talking all about the Aitum Vertical and the Aitum Multistream plugins. So I must admit, these are really cool things, and not a lot of software lets you do this in this exact same way. And it does require a little bit of thought, and a little bit of planning with your scene collection up front. But once you've got it there, it's kind of good to go for the rest of the time. And I guess, you know, my use case for this is very much just recording a second version in a vertical format so I can make clips, I can do YouTube shorts, I can do reels, all of those sorts of things. So I'm really curious, and I suspect most people in this audience probably haven't played with this yet. I'm curious, are you tempted, or are you just happy to do your own thing? Either is fine, of course. But I'm kind of curious to see how you guys feel about that. All right. So this is OBS Obsessed. My name's John Lacey, and I do this show every 2 weeks, and I like to show you stuff about OBS Studio, which is free and open source software. I feel the need to mention that actually because somebody during the week I invited them to this and they were like, okay, that's cool, but what does any of that mean? So OBS Studio is free and open source software that you can download from obsproject.com. In fact, let me bring that website up for you. So this is obsproject.com. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It's completely free. And it's something that you can use to create videos. So do local video recording, you can live stream with it, and you can also use the virtual camera, which essentially will change how you look in software that supports the use of a web camera. And for me, I think the virtual camera is really interesting, and I think it's something a lot of people don't understand, but it's really, really cool because you could easily bring in your branding into your web camera, and you could have calls to action, you could have QR codes, you could have text, you could have colors, you could have images, and you could bring all of that stuff into things like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, literally anything that sort of supports the use of a web camera. It is predominantly for the visuals. If you did want to bring audio in from OBS, you do need to use a virtual audio cable to do that, which is something I've never actually done. But I know it's possible, and I know other people do that. I personally don't feel the need to do that, but if you wanted to, you could explore that. Again, although this is open source software, it does have some corporate sponsors, as we discussed in a previous episode. But it's really cool. If you want help with any of this, a really good place to go is the help section here. They've got their guides and help. They've got an official Discord, so if you've got to ask questions, you can do that there. There are also forums as well. So if you check out the guides and help, you can check out the frequently asked questions, getting started, troubleshooting, all the various things. And there's some really good stuff in here. The great thing about this too is even though the software is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, some of the features do vary from platform to platform. And I see a lot of questions from Mac users on Facebook about this software, and I kind of have to go to the guides and just check things out and say, oh, okay, well, this is how it works on Windows, but it looks like it's a little bit different on the Mac. But, you know, if you wanted to find out about the application audio guide, for example, you could do that there. And they've got some screenshots and some instructions. It's nicely laid out. And I guess that the criticism that we sometimes hear about this software is that it's sort of hard and scary. And I genuinely don't believe that's true, or I wouldn't be doing this work. But it does have a little bit of a learning curve, and you do need to spend a little bit of time learning it. And the metaphor, and it's a slightly mixed metaphor that I use, is, it's OBS Studio is a rocket ship in the sense that it can do literally anything, but it's also a pocket knife in the sense that it's really incredibly useful. And today we've been looking at some plugins, and that's the other great part about OBS Studio is because of the open source nature of it, there are developers out there building new and exciting things to extend its functionality. So, you know, the one that we've been looking at today has been the Aitum Vertical plugin. And again, that gives you the ability to have a second canvas here in OBS. So we can actually have a vertical version and a horizontal version. Normally this would be on the other side. I only move this over because I'm obscuring that part of the screen. But I can go back over here and we've got that there. We can create the scenes. They can have the same sources in them. They can have different sources in them. And the really magical thing about this, in my opinion, is the ability to link those scenes. So if you right click on a scene in the vertical scenes dock, you'll get the ability to link it. And you can actually link one scene with multiple scenes. So if, for example, and this is a pretty common use case for me personally, I'll often have a scene that, you know, everything in the vertical is just to this, because I just want a vertical recording of me talking, and I will edit it however I edit it later on. And we can sort of go in and link that to all the horizontal scenes if we wanted to. We could actually leave it off as well, because it's not going to move unless we tell it to move. So if that's the only scene you have in your vertical scene collection, and that might be enough, and often it is, that's often how I use it for this, that's certainly an option. All right. So let's talk about the other part of this, which I must admit I haven't really used that much yet, but I just want to flag it because it is a good thing to use in conjunction with the vertical plugin, and that is the Multistream plugin. And again, let's go back to the Aitum website to check this out. So if we go back to the products and we go to the Multistream, and this is aitum.tv. If you want to check this out, the link should be in the video description as well. So it says multi-streaming shouldn't be difficult. Aitum Multistream makes that a reality. Lets you go live on as many platforms as possible, completely free. Stop paying for expensive multi-streaming services and make the full use of your internet bandwidth. Okay, let's talk about that, because the reality of this way of working is that it will put additional pressure on certainly your internet connection, but also potentially your computer, depending on how you do this. So again, I wouldn't be going out to 500 different places, especially with my, frankly, crappy Australian internet connection. But if you have really high-speed internet, this might be something that's worth exploring. But the great thing about this is it'll actually give you the ability to decide which destinations the main canvas goes out to and which one the vertical canvas goes out to. And again, these are some of the other features that Aitum are talking about: maximizing your reach by multi-streaming, reach new audiences across different platforms, funnel additional viewership to your main platform, and gain subscriptions across multiple platforms. So I will note too that I do go out to, I don't know, I think it's 4 places at the moment: YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Facebook. And I'm not currently using this approach. I'm actually using a service called Restream. And part of the reason I like that is because it combines the chat, first of all, but also it just takes that one piece of data from my computer and my internet connection, and it carries the load of sharing those elsewhere. So that's really good for me. Again, I'm very much at the mercy of my crappy Australian internet. You may have better internet. If you have amazing internet, then by all means, this is probably something I would encourage you to check out. It does also give you other features, which again are probably a little technical and probably not for everybody, but they do have the ability to actually have a VOD track. So a common use of VOD tracks is to prevent certain audio hitting your VODs. However, it's common to not want that audio on other platforms too. So maybe you have an arrangement where you can play certain background music on Twitch, but you don't want it to be on your YouTube video because you don't have the license to do that. It seems like it actually could be granular enough to let you make that change. All right, and it's just encouraging you to download the plugin and enjoy higher quality. So a lot of this is pretty technical, and like I said, this is not something I'm personally using in my setup at the moment, but I thought it was worth looking at, seeing as we were looking at Aitum's other plugin too. So once you've installed this, you'll get a new dock, and if you're not seeing it, go to the docs menu, and it's called Aitum Multistream. And again, you have the ability to have the main canvas and the vertical canvas. So if we go to our settings, we can actually decide, you know, where we're going to actually add our outputs. So this is for the main canvas, and they have Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Trovo, X, formerly known as Twitter, Kick, and other services. And if you go to other services, it's essentially just a server and a stream key, so you can do that there. We do also have the same sort of thing for the vertical canvas. So again, the same services there as well. And once you add these, it's really just a question of going live with these and being good to go. And I'm not going to try and do this live on the show today, because it'd be a whole bunch of me copying and pasting API keys to places, which is not very exciting. But I am tempted to try this out in the near future. And I think it's interesting because I know a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, are really obsessed with the idea of vertical streaming. And I would be curious to see what you guys think about it, because I must admit, I'm not that excited about it. I don't think it's that big a deal. You know, whether I'm holding my phone in one direction or the other is kind of neither here nor there. I mean, it's interesting in the sense that you have a different canvas to work in and you can think about how you're going to rearrange those different elements. But otherwise, I don't know that it's really that exciting, but I would be really curious to hear what you guys think. So I feel like I've gotten through my content in record time today. So if you do have any questions, let me know in the chat. If you are working on anything exciting that you'd like to share with the group as well, that would be awesome. Just throw that in there as well. But again, just keep in mind, both of these plugins are available from Aitum.tv. If you do actually want to test these out without impacting your current setup, I do actually have an article on how to download and install a portable version of OBS Studio on my website. And I'm just going to see if I can quickly find that and throw that into the chat for you. And I think that's often a good idea, because you can add as many plugins as you like, but if one plugin breaks everything, then you have to sort of figure out which one that was and go backwards in time. All right, so I'm just trying to find this portable version. It's a really, really old article, but it works perfectly fine. There's a little bit of text. In fact, I might even show you this article while we talk about it. This is the joy of multitasking. So this is over on johnlacey.com, running a portable version of OBS. There is a video that walks you through this, but we do have the steps here as well. And again, this is specifically for Windows. So if you actually download a zipped version of this instead of the normal installer, you unzip that somewhere. You go in and create a shortcut. You add -- portable at the end of the target. And there's sort of an example there from OBS 28. So that'll give you some idea of how old this article is. And then you can just, you can actually change the name of that shortcut if you want to and click OK, and you can sort of run from that one as well. So I will throw this in the chat. We might do that via Mix It Up. So you can check that out there as well. Don't forget that you can check out the OBS, speaking of johnlacey.com, you can go to OBS, johnlacey.com OBS News, and that'll take you to the OBS Obsessed newsletter, which is currently housed on LinkedIn, and you can sort of read articles and about the subjects that we've been talking about, and potentially watch some of those videos as well. But otherwise, that's probably all I really have to share with you today. So let me just check in with the chat one last time. Let me just put those links on the screen. So again, got to press the second button. So running a portable version of OBS Studio, which you can find at johnlacey.com. And also, if you go to OBS, johnlacey.com /OBS News, you will see that newsletter as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. A little bit of a shorter episode, but I think this is really cool. I think it's worth playing with. Whether it becomes a main part of your setup or not, the thing I say about OBS is because it is literally free, you don't need to feel bad about having it on your computer. You don't need to feel bad about paying monthly fees and then never actually using it. You can just reach for it when it makes sense to do so. So the chat support is telling me to remind you, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. But I hope this has been useful. Let me know if you try it out. That would be really cool. But otherwise, have a great week, have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again very, very soon.